third practice problem set for fiscal policy. And so this one we're going to be given a series of graphs and then some prompts down here at the bottom. And we're going to be asked with an MPC or an MPS, how much should we change taxes or government spending to close the gap? And I've got a little piece of scratch paper here that might help us as we work through these. So the first question says, what kind of gap is this? And so we have to observe that we have Y1 and we have YF, and Y1 is bigger than YF, so this is an expansion. Right? That's the first step, and then we observe how big's the gap. Well, 150 to 250, so it's a 100 gap. Now, a useful thing to think about here is what's the goal then? And the goal is actually negative 100. We want to bring GDP down by 100. So then we get to this problem. MPC is 0.8, and we're asked how much is the change in taxes. And this part, it's a two-part question. First is convert this MPC into multipliers, both the spending and the tax multiplier. And then the second part of this question is how much should we change taxes for? So let's tackle the first part first. If MPC is 0.8, MPS is 0.2 because these two things have to equal 1. And the spending multiplier is 1 over the MPS, so that's 1 over 0.2, which is 5. And then we know that if spending multiplier is 5, the tax multiplier is 1 minus 5, which is negative 4. 1 minus 5, it's always 1 minus the spending multiplier. So now we have a tax multiplier, and what we're going to do is say we have a change in taxes times the tax multiplier will give us some change in output. And we have two of these three variables. We're just looking for the change in taxes. And what's the change in output? Well, what's the goal? Negative 100. We want to bring GDP down by 100. We know the tax multiplier is negative 4, so the value here has to be positive 25, and that's our answer, the increase by 25. Now let's take the second part into here. So we'll get a different part of the scratch paper. If the MPS were 0.5, MPS equals 0.5, change in G to close the same gap. So it's the same gap, but now we have different MP value, marginal propensity, and we're asked about government. So spending multiplier is 1 over 0.5, which is 2. So then we have the second stage of this problem. The spending multiplier times the government spending change equals a change in output. And now we just say, all right, well, we know we want negative 100 because that's our goal. The gap is 100 too much, so we want to reduce it 100. And we have a spending multiplier of 2, so we have to get a negative 50 for government spending. So we could actually say decrease 50. Okay, next problem here. We're rolling right along. What kind of gap is this? This one, we have YF and Y1, and so we actually have a recession because Y1 is less than YF. How big is the gap? Well, it's 81, but again, what's the goal here? The goal is add 81 because we're too low. So now, tackle the MPCs. MPC equals 0.9, change in taxes. All right, so MPS is 0.1 because they have to equal 1. Spending multiplier, 1 over 0.1 is 10. Tax multiplier, 1 minus 10 is negative 9. And so now we've got the pieces that we need. Change in taxes times negative 9 equals positive 81. So again, I'm just plugging in the values that we already used from before, so that means the change in taxes has to be negative 9. That means we reduce taxes by 9. Okay, reduction by 9. If the MPS were 0.5, how much should G be adjusted? And now if MPS equals 0.5, change in G, so that means the spending multiplier is 1 over 0.5 for 2, so change in G times 2 equals positive 81. These again, we're looking for a goal of 81 here, so change in G is equal to positive 40.5. So we want to increase by 40.5. Okay, now let's take a look at the ones at the bottom of the page. The bottom of the page, they don't give you graphs, but they give you a little quick prompt. So let's first identify the gap, and we know that if the gap is something, then we'll be able to reverse that and say what's the goal. So the gap here is potential is 125, GDP is 150, so actually we have too much GDP, and so the goal, right, I'm going to write that to the next of it, is negative 25. And then here, 600 above, that's too much GDP, so the goal is negative 600. The gap here, potential is 450, GDP is 330, so the gap is 120, so our goal is going to be to add 120. And then here, it's negative 400, and so our goal is to add 400. Now, let's fill out this table. MPCs we don't really need, but that's 0.8, and this is 0.67 because we're just adding to figure out 1. MPS we will need, that's 0.25, and that's 0.1. And now let's write spending multiplier. Let's put that one right there, and let's do another little column right here for the tax multiplier. So the spending multiplier is just 1 over MPS. So this would be 5 and 4 and 3 and 10. And if our goal is negative 25 and we have a spending multiplier of 5, then we should have negative 5 government spending. If the goal is negative 600 and the spending multiplier is 4, then it's negative 150. Then positive 120, then 3 is positive 40, and then last but not least is positive 40, because it's 10 is our spending multiplier times positive 40 gives us positive 400. Now let's do the tax multipliers. These are always 1 minus the spending multiplier. 1 minus the spending multiplier. So that's negative 4, negative 3, negative 2, negative 9. And now we're going to do it again. Negative 4, this might be easier if you write it out, right? Negative 4 is the tax multiplier times a change in t equals negative 25. Now this one's a little harder, but 4 goes into 25 6 times with 1 left over, and so that would be positive 6.25. So positive 6.25. So we'd want to raise taxes 6.25. For the next one, negative 600, negative 600, and a negative 3. So this one is positive 200. And then here we've got positive 120 equals negative 2 times positive 60, right? So we'd want negative there to make sure that becomes a positive. So negative 60, we'd want to cut taxes there. We're in a recession. And then finally, negative 9 times some value is equal to positive 400. And for this one, it's going to end up being negative 44-ish, right, with a couple of decimal points, actually. So one quick observation about this. On a test, you're probably not going to see that or that because of the decimal answers. It is likely that you'll have to do the rest of these and be able to do them kind of on paper like this. So hopefully this helps you make sense of how we approach these types of problems. You kind of just sit them out and follow some formulas, and they're really not too shabby. I'll see you next time.